So now the preamble is over. Talk about product market fit. It is the case that most startups fail because they don't find product market fit. They don't find a market need. So there's no, I assume they have a product, so they just didn't find a market for their product. And ran out of cash is a second, but I think if they had market need, they would not have run out of cash. So I kind of think the first two are the same. And then not the right team. You know, there are some pretty messed up teams, but if there is a market need, usually you'll be fine. So I would say this is if a startup has a market need that they've tapped into, then that is like the #1 key thing. So, okay, so how do you find product market fit? That's kind of like what I'm here to talk about today. I don't think there's a formula. This kind of ties back to what I was saying, but there was a lot of heuristics that I found pretty helpful to thinking about this. Okay, and I'll just kind of talk about these heuristics today, and maybe they're useful for you, maybe they're not, and they're mental shortcuts. So maybe I just listed some here, and there's probably plenty other. Jobs to be done is a cool framework. And you know what? I'm just going to kind of go into each one. So let me just do that. Okay, it's a little distracting when people kind of pop in and out, but it's like loud in Zoom. So first is this concept of jobs to be done. People might have heard about this already, but essentially, so a job to be done is a framework created by this professor, Clayton Christensen at Harvard, who also wrote The Innovator's Dilemma, which is an awesome book. But jobs to be done is sort of describing like why products exist. And it helps to first talk about the foil that it's sort of like disproving. And I think what it so first of all, there is sort of like this sort of opinion that people buy products because they're a certain demographic. So for example, like the New York Times, the audience is like college educated, urban 20 to 40-year-olds. And that's why you read the New York Times. And that's how a lot of people like kind of think about the product. They think like, what's our target demographic when thinking about a product? But jobs to be done is sort of a counter argument to that. And it's saying that people don't buy things because they are a certain person or a certain persona. They buy things because throughout your day, you have little problems that come up. Maybe you're bored, maybe you need to get from point A to point B. Maybe you need to write something. And these problems, how do you get them done? How do you get the jobs done? So you hire products to get that job done. So point A to point B, I hire Uber to bring me there. For Snackpass, you know, if I don't have much time or I want to order and I don't want to skip the line, I don't want to stand in line, I'll just hire Snackpass to solve my problem. And if I want to save money, you know, it also solves that problem. And if I'm bored, I'll hire Instagram or I'll hire TikTok or I'll hire my chess app to get that job done. And so the point of the product is to solve these jobs to be done. So maybe we could take a look here. So let's take a look at like DECODE, the product. The job to be done is maybe I'm playing League with my friends and we need to talk to each other. As opposed to the persona, which is like gamers in high school and college. Instacart too. Why hire Instacart? The job to be done is I need groceries and I don't have time to go to the grocery store. The persona is sort of like suburban wealthy families. You know, TikTok, the job to be done is I'm bored and want to watch something fun, whereas the persona is Gen Z. And lastly, Coinbase, the job to be done is I want to buy Bitcoin, whereas the persona is maybe a millennial crypto enthusiast. And I want to argue that persona is a inferior way to look at products because, for example, you know, that job to be done might be relevant to people outside of the persona. Maybe your grandma wants to buy Bitcoin, right? And so if you focus on the job to be done, being the best way to buy Bitcoin or being the safest way to buy Bitcoin, you're gonna be the best way to sell that job, as opposed to like, you know, trying to create a product for millennial crypto enthusiasts. Like, what are their jobs to be done? It expands the product more by focusing on the problem you're solving as opposed to like the demographic. Obviously, like certain demographics have different problems, but you know, sometimes they have the same problem. But anyways, people, you know, use your product because they not, you know, like no one has to use any product, so they only use it if it actually accomplishes something. So yeah, I think it's a pretty obvious and simple way to look at things, but I've found that sometimes the most useful frameworks are simple and obvious that people just don't think about. So this is one of them. To recap, people use the product because they have a job to be done, not because they are a certain demographic. And by the way, also most customers, like they want value. You're not giving them technology. So that could be solving a problem. It could be entertaining. It can help them achieve a goal. And you know, if you start with that need, you can work backwards to the technology. Sometimes the technology might not even be technology. You know, for example, I was trying to solve better communication with my team, and the product I hired was a plane ticket to go to New York so I can talk to them in person, and that solved the job better for me. So I think it's just a more sensible way to think about. I've actually found that a lot of investors don't think about jobs to be done. They think about like trends. And I mean, obviously trends exist for a reason. There's some change in technology, but if you're working at the product level, which entrepreneurs are, like customers don't care about trends. They don't care about anything except themselves. So they're very selfish. And so if you don't do something that they need, like who cares what trend you are? Actually, that tangent, I think customers not only don't care about the trends, they don't even care about your company. So for example, when DoorDash raised their Series C, they actually had a lot of trouble because Uber just came out with Uber Eats at the time, and people said like they're gonna crush you. And but you know, the customer doesn't care how much money the company has. The customer only cares who solves the job better. In this case, it was like getting them the restaurants they want delivered faster. And just because Uber had a lot of money, it actually turned out they didn't solve the problem better. And DoorDash, for example, focused on suburbs where they could create a lot of value because for a bunch of reasons, but like one, like it's like a more stable job, like as a driver, so they have more drivers. You know, I don't know all the details, but and sometimes having a lot of money and having a big company does solve the problem better for the customer. So for example, Microsoft is killing Slack with like Microsoft Teams. And I guess they solved the problem better because, you know, it's more integrated into existing enterprise software with Microsoft. I don't exactly know either. But the point being is sometimes you get outcompeted by a bigger company, sometimes you don't. But at the end of the day, the reason anything succeeds is because it solves the problem for the customer better, right, than other options. Okay, so that's heuristic number one, is job to be done. Heuristic number two, your initial hypothesis doesn't need to be correct. This is also like one of those like simple and obvious things, but it's kind of helpful and maybe not super obvious until you kind of think about it. So a lot of companies don't like really find out, like have the right product until kind of like quite a bit into the company. So for example, Uber started with like black cars, like limos during their seed. And then their Series A, they were also black cars. And then between the Series A and Series B, Lyft launched and they had their ride sharing, and they saw that this was the thing. And so they quickly pivoted to ride share and executed it better. And then they grew much faster. And then they had some HR problems, and now Lyft is like gonna win that. But point being, as long as you don't have HR problems, you should have the lack of ego to not care about what your initial idea was or what you started out with, or if someone else is doing it. It's you got to figure out what's the biggest problem to solve or biggest value to create for customers. And if you can do it better than other companies, then you will succeed. This was actually our early app. It wasn't even an app, it was a website. And this was kind of like sort of like exploring some of the early ideas of what Snackpass was. So like initially we had a lot of discounts that you get by being a student using your .edu email. And then we added rewards and like tested that out. And so we didn't start out with, actually, so I'll give the story here. So when we started Snackpass, it was initially, the idea was like, you can get discounts by being a student. And that was about it. And I went around to like the different restaurants at Yale's campus and basically offered it as a marketing service. The idea was like merchants charge the same price for every customer, but that's like inefficient according to like economic theory. Like there's a lot of dead weight loss. Looking back, it's kind of like a dumb way to start a company, but it kind of goes to what I was saying. Like it doesn't really matter how you started, as long as you arrive at a point where you can deliver value for customers. Like the customer doesn't care how you started it. So that's kind of how it started. But we learned two huge insights in the early days after launching. The first was that like we actually added pizza restaurants first, and they were delivering. We only added pickup because there was like this restaurant I went to all the time. I wanted them on. But the two big insights were, one, people came for the discounts, but they stayed for the convenience of being able to order ahead and not wait for your food. And so then kind of realized like that is a huge shift in how things are going to happen. And this whole like cashier and like register setup and like cashier entering the order is like going to be a thing of the past. Like it still exists today, but it's like, it's wild. Like how many man hours are wasted on that? Like, why are they doing that? And then the second big insight was when we were launching, we focused on the pickup and we had rewards, kind of like Starbucks app, but it wasn't growing as virally. And I had seen, obviously like Facebook and then Snap and Tinder, all these successful apps launching on campuses and growing really fast because there was this like social component. So I thought like, what if there was a way to harness that virality, but in an e-commerce setting? And that was the initial question, but and there was a bunch of ideas, some were terrible, but we had these reward points. And so one day I was like walking back and it just kind of clicked in my head, like, what if you don't just get one for yourself, you get to send one on every purchase? So that's what led to gifting. And that led to a lot of the sort of natural, like word of mouth built into the product. And then after that, it like exploded on campus. So the point being, those two insights were not there when I started this endeavor. And so I think the obvious and simple heuristic here is that your hypothesis may be directionally correct and maybe in the right industry or something, but you learn so much just like diving in and understanding small or large pivots. You're just learning, they're not really pivots. We didn't start with pickup or social rewards. And I would say that maybe the goal is to, once you're in that space, like understand it, understand all the like nooks and crannies, because once you can like look at crypto or food delivery, food pickup, like food pickup doesn't even seem like a thing if you look at it from sort of like an investor angle or like a bird's eye view angle. But once you get in there, there's so much like opportunity on every like nook and cranny. And so you can just get in there, learn quickly, validate your hypotheses, and continue inventing. And that's not to say like there's like this lean startup thing, not to say like I think, we at every stage, I kind of had an opinion about the future. So like I had an opinion that registers were going to be replaced by mobile ordering, or that combining, like it's much more fun to get rewards you can get with friends. But so it's not like so unopinionated, or like you gotta have some type of vision, I think. But that can change early on. So that's what I have to say about that. Okay, another heuristic, stupid, impatient, and mean. So my college professor for philosophy actually gave us some advice on writing essays. And his advice was to pretend your reader is stupid, impatient, and mean. And this kind of changed my life, or at least changed a lot of how I wrote essays and then other stuff. Because before that, I would like write essays that were like super, kind of like almost like how I was thinking about it exactly. But the problem with that is, first, the customer or the reader hasn't thought about what you're thinking about as long as you have. So they don't know all the context. And so relatively speaking, it would be like kind of, you can consider them kind of stupid. Well, at least you have to write as if they were stupid, because relative to you, they just don't have all the context, you haven't spent the time with the material that you have. Two, you should consider them impatient, because you like, again, you spend all this time and you're really kind of taking the time to develop your idea, but they are going to read it in like 5 minutes and then leave. And so relative to you, they're not going to spend as much time reading the essay. And lastly, like mean. So it's your essay, your argument. You're going to be much more charitable to gaps in logic and stuff like that. But the reader, is not as emotionally invested. So they're going to be mean relative to you. So in order to like overcorrect for all that, by kind of envisioning the reader as stupid, impatient, mean, it forces you to change the way you write. And I think all of this applies to building a product too, like even more so. I mean, the customer is not going to know anything, they're not going to bother to learn about what you're doing. They're bombarded with marketing and they really are skeptical. So you have to keep things as simple, get to the point, make it a no-brainer, make it a no-brainer. Literally, I was basically like, okay, so the customer will look at our flyer for like a second, and that's it. Are you able to get their attention for a second? That's the bar. Another heuristic along these lines, like the irresponsibility test. So kind of think of it like when I started Snackpass, I kind of, before I was working on this kind of like Etsy for fashion, and it sounded like a really cool thing that should exist, but I wasn't really solving any consumer problem or like customer problem. So when I started Snackpass, I kind of asked myself, like, what would be something my roommates would be like stupid not to use? And that was the bar. And so I thought, well, if they go get food and they can get it at like a cheaper price, if they didn't use that would be really dumb, or maybe irresponsible. It's like a nicer way of putting it. So that's about it. And yeah, and then I think part of this topic was like getting 1,000 true fans. Like, how do you get those true fans? And there's this common like slogan, like, do things that don't scale, like Y Combinator. It's pretty good advice. And I'll just kind of share some of the examples I did to get those early users. First, we just gave out cupcakes in the library. We put flyers on every door, in the drinking fountains and everything. And I thought I had another, but yeah, I mean, it wasn't anything like scientific. I just wanted to see if like we put some marketing dollars behind it, that people would sign up and use it, and they did. So down the road, though, once you sort of establish that there is product market fit, the go-to-market strategy is almost like make or break as much as the product market fit. So like, for example, there's this company called like Homejoy, I think. It was a YC company back in the day. And it was basically like Uber for cleaning your house. And I think the NPS score is pretty high for like getting 1 or getting like trying the service once, but how did they scale? They didn't. You have to balance for these like local marketplaces, like liquidity of the supply with demand. So you kind of have this chicken and egg problem. If you don't have enough massage therapists, there's not enough customer. Or sorry, not. I was thinking there's another thing called Soothe that has a similar problem. But with Hometree, there's not. You have to get enough like cleaning people, but enough to have enough value for customers. But then if you don't have customers, there's not much value for the cleaning people. And not only that, but once the customers like got the cleaning people, they realized it was better just pay them directly and not go through the service. And I think that a similar thing happens with like Thumbtack and with tutoring. So that go-to-market, and I honestly, we have also evolved our go-to-market. We used to do a lot of ambassadors and like field marketing, like putting flyers up, and we no longer do that. And it took a lot of figuring out how to do that. We had to change the product and business model dramatically. So I wouldn't discount like how important that is. And honestly, if I was thinking about creating another company again, I would probably think about what the go-to-market strategy is just as much as like the product market fit part. And just give another example. So with Snackpass, it's sort of like a local marketplace, like delivery. But delivery, the radius, if you get a restaurant, you can deliver to like maybe like 2 miles. Whereas Snackpass, you're not going to walk 2 miles to get your food. So it's like half a mile, if that. But then it's also area. So it's like, it's not just 4x, it's 4 squared, right? 16x. And I don't even think I think it's probably more than that. So for every supply, we could serve a much more limited number of much limited number of customers around that. And so the initial thing we did with like trying to create this like chicken and egg thing was harder because if you just got a restaurant like slightly outside the bubble, they would not get enough customers to want to stay on. Yeah, so that was interesting. But there was also benefits of pickup. And one benefit is that you don't have drivers. And there's a huge sort of juggling act you have to do when you have drivers. You have to have enough demand to get enough, like it costs maybe $1,000 or more to even have one driver in a location. So you have to generate enough demand to keep those drivers on. And if you don't, you're gonna have to pay them a lot out of your operating expense. So we didn't have that. So that means we could just launch restaurants anywhere. We didn't have to have enough demand or enough drivers. So we just launched a restaurant in like Honolulu this week. And we'll launch a restaurant like in, like Arizona, like just one location. And, even if I'll use the Starbucks app, even if that's the only restaurant I can use it at is Starbucks. But whenever I order at Starbucks, I'll use the Starbucks app. So there are shortcomings of pickup, but there are also benefits. And so that go-to-market stuff, I would say, is just as important as like the product market fit. Like in an ideal world, everyone lives right next to the restaurant. We have every restaurant. And so Snackpass is just amazing. But that's like not how how do you reproduce that? So we had to really think about it. And that just goes to another point too, like for anyone starting a company and like getting a lot of advisors and board members, like, as humans, we're like very pattern match kind of people. Like, again, this heuristic thing, like these are just patterns we've seen. But if you're doing something new, like oftentimes those patterns don't apply. And so when we, did our Series A, Series B, we got a lot of people from Uber, Instacart, like local marketplace people. And they're like, yeah, like we really know how to like launch local marketplace. Like you got to do it this way. And it turns out like it really did not apply to Snackpass, and because of that whole like difference between delivery and pickup and the radius stuff. But that's just like how they had one example and they were so confident in it because Uber was so successful that they're like, oh, we really know how to do it. And there's a bunch of like interesting things here. Like another thing to think about is like if you're sort of like an executive or, or just like someone, an operator, like you were operations at Uber or something like that, like technically speaking, the reason you're paid more than someone who's a new grad is because of your experience. So you're kind of invested that the experience you have is applicable in future companies. So you're almost like, you believe it, but it's because your financial incentives are aligned. So you're like more convinced to believe it. But really, I think the best people, the best operators, the best founders, like they use their past experience to ask the right questions in new environments, new startups, but they don't blindly copy and paste. They have that beginner's mindset. Otherwise, it might not work. Like how do you know it's the right way to do it? So some advice. But yeah, that's how we got our first, customers. Just did it manually. And some other piece of advice here, like I've seen like YC companies selling into SaaS, like selling SaaS to other startups, like they'll use their network, like warm intros. I just got my roommates to like order on Snackpass in the beginning. I've seen companies be a consultant. So like when they're early on building like a SaaS product and they don't have everything built yet, they'll actually just offer to be the consultant for that startup. And some of these YC companies, they're like literally in our code base at Snackpass, like building stuff custom for us. And that's to compensate for the fact that they don't have a platform yet. And that's fine. And it's like, just do it kind of like that in the early days. Okay, and then lastly, another piece of advice for finding product market fit is to choose the right market. So, we like Snackpass, you can skip the line, order ahead, and get rewards. And in theory, that works at every restaurant, but we found it's a lot easier if the restaurant is also kind of bought in. And we used to like really go at an uphill battle, like getting into some of these restaurants that are like, it's not like a logic thing. It's like they just don't want to change the way to do it, even if they'll make more money. But then other restaurants are like very kind of bought in already, so it goes much faster. So here's like a boba shop in Palo Alto called Wanpo, and so they're like super bought in. They've like replaced their cashier. It's like all Snackpass kiosk and mobile order, and like the product was right, and then finding the right sort of early adopters was so important to just like speed up adoption and customer acquisition. And so we're like constantly finding like what's after boba, like what are other segments, and we are getting better at identifying early adopters. I guess this is more, I think there's a lot of examples of this. There's a really good book called Crossing the Chasm, which is about like early adopters, like early majority, late adopters. And time and time again, you see some of these companies like getting that momentum by finally finding an early adopter segment. So the example that was given in the book was like Wealthfront. It's like a robo advisor, like financial advisor, but they really found success with like basically 20 in like software engineers in their 20s who aren't like have a lot of money, but then like, and maybe they're at Google, they have a lot of income, but then they're like kind of maybe a little less developed in sort of like their like life finances. And from that, they had that wedge, they're able to get growth. And, by the time they get to the next segment, they have more infrastructure built, they have more funding, they have a more mature product. So it's just having that early adopter allows for you to make a lot more mistakes, I think. Okay. Lastly, I think I think some common questions like, how do you know you have product market fit? I don't think there's like a formula. I mean, as I said before, there's no formulas in business, but some indications that we had it, like our sales went up a lot, had like high retention. I think that's important. for not all companies maybe, but like, I guess Peloton, you buy one. Well, I guess you can subscribe, but people kept using it, and that was really different because I think like one of our competitors, Ritual, they spent a lot on discounts, but then I don't think people used it afterwards. So you can kind of fool yourself into thinking of product market fit with a growth like that, but then are people staying? That's important. You get like qualitative sort of thing, like users tweeting, in the last 30 minutes, I've received 3 presents. Snackpass, I've literally never felt this popular. Someone made like a shrine or something, like a mural. So that's cool. So I don't know, you just kind of see these things. We had like a Slack channel that I would see like every purchase come in, because it was like kind of like a boost of like motivation. And then at some point, like I had to like mute it because we're just getting too many purchases. So it, there's no like one indicator, I would say. Yeah, okay, that's the end of my presentation. I guess maybe use the rest of the time for Q&A.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, Kevin. Can we get a round of applause for Kevin? Yeah. So I guess we have that. So we can sort of transition into our like Q&A session. So if anybody has questions for Kevin, you can totally just like raise your hand and come up, talk to him directly, or you can use the Zoom chat and ask questions through there as well. But yeah, it's all up to you guys. You don't really have anything for here. Kevin, it doesn't look like we have a question already. So go on.
Sorry, it's a little hard to hear, but if someone maybe after, I don't know, can someone like write the question also into the chat?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear.
Awesome. We are working in a B2B payment checkout for e-commerces. And we are in that part on choosing the right market because we are a Spanish startup. However, we see a big opportunity here in the US. We see that Spain, it's really small market compared to US, but also we have the experience and the team there, so we know about the culture in Spain. There is no leader there. However, here we are really new in the US, and we don't know the regulations. We don't have any like like starting from zero. So, from your point of view, what exactly can help us, or which question do we need to ask to our team to choose this right market?
Sorry, can you repeat the part that's like, you're saying starting from zero?
Yeah, like if we decide to go to US, it's like starting from zero because we don't have any experience here. We know how companies work there, but not here. But it's huge market, right? B2B payment is like
in Spain, it's a huge market.
A huge market here, like
here, got it.
And then it's trillions, and there it's 200 millions. And the good thing is there is not leader there. There is almost no competitors. So
got it.
It's hard.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think I think Razorpay is because each country has so many particular regulations and integrations, like you're able to serve that country in the payment space better than like a Stripe or something like that. So I mean, I guess if you're so that makes sense to me. And then if your question is how do you enter the US market, well, I guess I had that framework earlier, but like are you seeing sort of like an unmet need or value that you can do better than like incumbents or alternative solutions? And if so, then definitely worth a try. And if not, then just because it's working in Spain doesn't mean you'll be able to succeed. So yeah, I think, I don't know if that answers the question or if I understood it correctly.
Yeah, I know it's a really hard. It's so hard to say something just not having context, and we just we want to understand what are the questions that we need to ask ourselves to choose US rather than Spain or Spain rather than US, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think comes down to yeah, like, are you creating value that people don't have alternatives for? Like, it's better than the alternatives. If in the US there's a lot of good alternatives, then maybe that's not super lucrative or worth it. But if in Spain, like, it's super unaddressed and foreign competitors aren't addressing the needs, then that seems like there's an opportunity. But yeah, I mean, I think comes down to whether you're really creating value for the customer. That's the question I would ask.
Okay, thank you very much.
Oh, and we have seen there are like commodities even in this. So for example, like point of sales, we're very familiar, like Square, Toast, like they're not that different. So you have many alternatives. So obviously econ 101, if you have a lot of supply, then the price goes down, and you can't charge any, like, make any profit. So that's kind of why it's important to, this is super obvious, but why it's important to be differentiated. Like, if the alternative is something that's just as good as yours, then you're not going to be able to charge a lot of money. And then it's also important to define the alternative. So for example, like, what's the alternative for Snackpass? We actually view it as standing in line. So people say, like, is a competitor DoorDash or is a competitor Ritual? Like, the competitor is what the customer is choosing instead of using your product. So you have to think, and so if it's standing in line, then you're competing against like that non-consumption. That's kind of how we see it.
Yeah, we have another question, so.
Hey, Kevin, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, my name's Ani. Thanks so much for the talk. It was really great. I had a couple of questions. So firstly, in the early days, before you guys really had much, like extensive kind of like a track record or anything like that, how did you approach like the business model in terms of getting restaurants on board? Was it like a subscription kind of thing, or like you subsidize stuff? Like, how did you get different restaurants on board with your platform?
In the early days, we actually just charged a commission, like a transaction fee, significantly lower than on-demand delivery because our costs were lower.
And was this like a flat kind of rate, or was it kind of independent on who you were like working with?
Yeah, it was about 7% of like flat rate. Yeah.
Oh wait, so is that the commission for like users, like people who are like buying the food, or like the businesses themselves?
The businesses.
Oh, okay. Cool. And then I guess the follow-up to that would be like, what do you think was like the most I guess instrumental strategy in terms of like expanding the platform across like different college campuses, because like different areas would have different kind of demographics and kind of different contextual things. So, like, what do you think helped like make it scale, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, this is still something we're figuring out, is like how to bring it to new markets faster, markets beyond college campuses. And we have promising signs that it's like all our updates to the go-to-market strategy are working. And things didn't work in the past. Like, sometimes we had like a salesperson go to a new market in campus and they couldn't sign up all the restaurants that we needed, for example. That would be a reason. Like, or we'd sign up all the restaurants, sign up important restaurants, but the pickup experience wasn't great. Like, they would shut it off, or they would prioritize in-store customers. So yeah, there was a lot of like I mean, to be honest, that's been the hardest part, is like, I mean, we spent like the first 6 months, 12 months, like figuring out what the product is, but the rest of the time since has been how to scale it. But it's taken us some interesting directions, and I think the right ones. So, for example, what would make a customer use Snackpass more? And we realized it was, aside from the obvious stuff, like there would be like more discounts or something, but like more restaurant availability, more reliability. So basically you don't get served last, and then more availability. So it's always on and restaurants don't shut it off. But then when we looked at the restaurant, it was completely broken. Like they would get all these Snackpass orders, but then they wouldn't be able to handle it because the employees didn't know who to serve, like in store or whatever. And so we realized actually to solve the problem of pickup fundamentally for high volume places, you have to fix their in-store orders. They have this line at the register, and they don't know who to prioritize. And so we realized that you actually have to turn it into one digital queue, so that you can control like the order flow. And so that's why we introduced like the kiosk for some of these places. And that really changed like how we launched new campuses and new markets. Like now we basically just sign up the restaurant with like a kiosk and a register, and that gives, unlocks all the customers, but also solves all those customer experience issues too. So yeah, we've definitely evolved how we launch new campuses. And there's still so much to figure out, like how do we 10x our sales pipeline? Like, is it just hiring 10x more salespeople, or is it something else? And those are things we're still figuring out.
Yeah, thanks so much. And did you like launch in trials? Like, did you do any like pilots kind of thing, or did you just?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, free trials. That's a huge. We did like order guarantees, like we guarantee you 10K in sales. A whole bunch of stuff. Like we brought restaurants gift baskets, like Michael Scott.
Oh, so you like gave it to them, like gave
Yeah.
just like. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Good. Yeah. Thanks so much.
Yep.
So when you were explaining the way that you guys grew from where you were in college to the current state, it seemed to exemplify the notion of validated learning. Have you read The Lean Startup by any chance?
I've seen through it. Yeah.
Yeah, so it basically touches on that idea. What experiments did you run to improve your minimal viable product into its current iteration, in addition to just kind of like basic market testing?
Yeah. And just to be completely transparent, I don't really think that book is sort of like the end all be all. And I think it's missing a lot of like vision. Like you have to have an opinion about where the market will inevitably be because of this better way of doing something. You can't just kind of like greedy the algorithm into like the right thing, but you do have to like go and try out and change stuff. So yeah, I don't know if there's no scientific method on how we did it. Sometimes we were really confident in something, like we knew that standing in line was really dumb and like that's going to change. And sometimes we didn't know like how the kiosk would work at certain restaurants, or whether we could sign up a bunch of restaurants with one salesperson or 10. Like we had different convictions about different things we had a lot of conviction about, maybe we're willing to invest more resources into. We're able to just like say like, okay, we're going to put 3 engineers or 5 engineers on this, have them build it for 10 months because we were super confident. And other things were like, okay, let's just go test it out. So yeah, I think it kind of scales based on your conviction. I really think like a lot of smart people in business and startups, but there's sort of an average amount of practicality or pragmatism. I think could use a little bit more practical minded people. And you got to be practical, and you got to be kind of visionary too. So it's like but you just have to get a good judgment. And I think whenever we're like hiring executives, one of the key things, or just anyone, is good judgment. And good judgment I define as knowing what to focus on and what not to focus on. And that's really hard because there's no like formula for it. people really want like an objective right answer to measure things, to say we win it or did it, but like that's not how business works. So sometimes you just got to give people a good judgment. It's pretty hard to define, but that doesn't mean it's not the most important thing. Anyways, I kind of give a long answer to that, but yeah, to answer your question specifically, for things that we really had very little conviction on, but we're trying, we'd create like, you know, something that had technical debt. Maybe we would reduce the impact of that technical debt by kind of like containing it from like core services. You know, we would release it to a very small group of users or something like that. Sometimes we would even just sell something to a restaurant without even building it yet, just to see how they would react. Obviously, we wouldn't like, you know, set them up for failure or anything. Like we would say like, this is coming soon, but we'd test the market for that. Other times, let's just say like we needed our reliability to just, we needed to be like uptime more. Like there's no way that's not going to be true in the future. So we would spend like an engineer like a whole year on that, and that was worth it. And we didn't need to test that.
All right, perfect. We have some more questions, so that more to come.
Hey, Kevin, how are you today?
Hey, good. How are you?
My name's Rishabh, and my team and I are also interested in the college/food space, and we're trying to create a startup in that space. I just wanted to know, you know, to reach product market fit, you've kind of got to reach a point where a customer would be willing to pay for your product. I was wondering, how did Snackpass go about getting customers to start paying and start putting the credit card information into the app? Because I know a lot of startups, for the go-to-market, they offer like a free trial or like, you know, free delivery. So I just want to know, like, how did Snackpass overcome that obstacle?
I guess the simple answer, it might sound kind of too simple, but you know, if people felt like it was worth it, and they either felt it was worth it for like initial discount or the convenience or the rewards. So, you know, that's how. And there's a lot of things these days like Apple Pay that make it super easy. Yeah. And also, you know, there's other ways to monitor. I think your initial thing was that you have to get people to pay, but like you don't pay for Facebook, so you can monetize indirectly through like attention. But yeah, I mean, I think for Snackpass, I mean, definitely. In the beginning, like people were super skeptical, especially in the beginning. I think most people are like, they're just like so numb to ads and new products or downloading apps. So, you know, maybe we had to incentivize with like a discount or credit or an ambassador thing. Yeah, that's one way to go about it.
Hey Kevin, my name is Arturo. I just wanted to ask a question, not regarding to processes, but more about funding. So I was reading about Snackpass, and I saw that people like Kevin Hart and Draymond Green were funding some of the some of the VCs that were investing in Snackpass. I just want to ask, how did you pick the companies to partner with to fund to raise capital for Snackpass? And also, how does it, man, I'm just curious, how does it feel when you hear about people like these believing in a company like Snackpass and kind of endorsing you through funding?
And the last part, how I feel, it's definitely kind of surreal. And yeah, I was like emailing like Jonas Brothers. You know, they do invest in a lot of like, they're kind of, I guess there's this whole new thing of celebrities investing in companies, which is awesome. So, you know, if there's a good opportunity, they'll find it. But well, so there's different sort of investors. There's like angels, there's sort of institutional funds, there's like celebrity investors. And I think their criteria is a little different for each one. Angels are super like, you know, kind of like low key in the sense that there's not much strings attached there. If you find someone who is helpful because of their experience, because of their connections, because they're just like love your thing and you're just like a good presence to have, like a cheerleader type, that's usually easy. It's a small check. From an institutional investors, that's a bit more strings attached. So, to take a bigger chunk, they might have to take a board seat. There's reputation there. The way I evaluate that is, if you don't have sort of like a tier 1 firm yet, what that brings is sort of like credibility, whether it's for hiring, whether it's for like customers, if you're B2B, whether it's for future fundraising. So that's kind of what you're buying, is that credibility, that sort of like signal, which, I mean, for hiring, it's very competitive. So, whatever helps is good. Obviously, it doesn't help you like make your company product better. So you kind of have to be realistic. And then other than that, like just how high integrity they are, whether they believe in what you're doing fully, not just because it's doing well like the past 2 months, because what happens if it doesn't do well after that? Or do they stop believing? Whereas if you find someone who believes, then even if when you don't do well, they still believe that it'll be big in the future. And then lastly, I think, there's definitely operational help that firms can bring with like their network or stuff like that. Celebrity investors, I think some have been awesome. We have a investor, David Grutman, who owns a ton of restaurants in Miami and is like very connected and awesome guy. And he's plugged us in a bunch of places. So, and some kind of just don't do as much, and that's okay too.
Okay. Take a follow-up question.
Hey man, thank you so much for answering that question. And I just wanted to follow up with one of the features on Snackpass. So what kind of made the chick feature? You know how they have the little animal feature? I just wanted to ask, like, what made you come up with that? And was that kind of a marketing strategy to keep the user more on the app and to engage them more on the app?
There wasn't much logic to that. We just thought it was funny. And initially, when you sent points, you would hatch like a chicken, like a 2D emoji. Because we were initially thinking like, how can we make like a streak, kind of like Snapchat? And then we initially started with the egg, and then we saw like the partially hatched chicken and the fully hatched chicken right next to it. And so we kind of thought like, instead of like a streak, what if you like hatch chickens? So kind of thought that was really funny. And at a certain point, the chickens kind of got boring because it was just like a emoji. And so I thought, well, like, what if you could like make it sort of like a Tamagotchi thing? And we looked into it, and we had like one intern who was kind of with us for a summer. And we just thought like, wouldn't it be funny if it was like 3D? And so we did it. Yeah, I mean, maybe it increases customer like marketing. Maybe it's like a brand thing. Maybe there's more to do later down the road. Like maybe if you get a reward at a restaurant, you get like a T-shirt that says like Yifang Berkeley or something on the chicken. So who knows what we'll do with that.
Cool. I'm just gonna go ahead and ask some questions from the Zoom chat. I noticed there's asking. So from Kevin, what is your biggest mistake and lesson from that through your Snackpass journey?
Oh, sorry, I can read it here. What is your biggest mistake? The most like tangible ones, I guess, probably related to hiring and just certain hires that didn't work out. I think it's kind of impossible to know or like have 100% like accuracy with that. Probably gonna have some bad hires, but yeah, some bad hires can have rippling effects for a long time. Crazy. Into different departments, into like overall team, waste a lot of time, waste a lot of energy. So I would say maybe like the top 5 mistakes are all like related to people hiring related things.
Okay, cool. And I think you touched on this a little bit earlier in one of your other answers, but Usman asked, when creating the kiosk, how did you convince restaurants to switch from their original POS
Yeah, I mean, it's still an issue we face. I think this is where that early adopter concept really comes in, because some restaurants even have a kiosk and it doesn't work well, but they're already bought into the idea. And so that's an easy win. And some are like primed, like they kind of maybe have been thinking about it already. So this is where sort of like filtering that customer segment really makes a difference. But I'll be honest, it's not a you know, like a solved problem. I think we're still figuring out better ways to, because I mean, generally speaking, restaurant owners, you know, they have like a certain way they've been doing things, and you don't want to cause too much friction or disruption. So the more we can kind of make it easy to switch, the better.
Cool. And another question for the class. Do the users matter? Do the users matter more in the beginning, or the businesses you're partnering with? And how do you get those things started?
Sorry, was it? Can you repeat that?
Yeah, I can read it. Can you hear me? Hello?
It's pretty faint. I heard most of it. Maybe just say one more time.
Do the users matter more in the beginning, or the businesses you're partnering with? And how do you get those things started?
Yeah. Well, specifically for us, because I'm sure it's different for every company. You know, let's just say we lost one customer, churned, that would have a moderate effect on the system. But if we had like one key restaurant churn, like Taco Sinaloa, that would have a much bigger effect on the system. So if you're talking about one unit of customer or one unit of restaurant, the restaurant mattered more.
Okay, perfect. I think we have one more question in this. How did you decide which kind of restaurants to target first when you started Snackpass?
Yeah, and this is also another thing we're still figuring out. You know, and initially we just went door to door to every restaurant, but you know, we would see certain types like coffee shops, or I mean, some like Super Duper or something like that, like boba, salad. I mean, you know, you might as well just go to all the restaurants and see which ones like are the most responsive. So we didn't think too hard about that. I mean, you know, there's just like concept. You know, a lot of my talk today has just been like kind of regurgitating these heuristics that are quite useful. And that's why I kind of like I kind of see business school or business advice as kind of like this oral history of people doing stuff that worked, and it's not really a science. But yeah, there's like type 1 and type 2 decisions. So I think type 1 is decisions that are like kind of irreversible, and type 2 are ones that are just walk into the door, and if you don't like what you see, you can walk back out. So I think that's one of those type 2 decisions, like we'll try every restaurant, and you know, doesn't really hurt.
Yeah, gotcha. And then I guess building off that question, somebody asked which restaurants were most eager to work with you guys.
Yeah. So kind of mentioned a lot of the, just in Berkeley, like some of the coffee shops, Cafe Milano, some of the Mexican places like Taco Sinaloa, like Dumpling Express, both like Yifang. So yeah, I mean, it's a very kind of high volume takeout, walkable area. So most of the restaurants are pretty receptive. Yeah.
Yeah, and then building off that again, what did those like companies want to see from you guys in order to partner? So like, was it other businesses or having like lots of people on the app? Like what exactly convinced them to partner with you guys in the early stages of Snackpass?
It was, I mean, they just wanted to see kind of orders, like, can we drive volume through our system?
Okay, yeah. Gosh, I think that. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm like cutting out. But I think that's sort of concludes the Q&A. Does anyone else have any, never mind, we do have more questions. Before.
Hey Kevin, I had another question. So when did you kind of decide that you wanted to like fully kind of, because as you said, you founded it, I guess in your senior year. So when did you know that you wanted to like fully do it, and like commit to Snackpass and like you kind of do it like full time? And what were the main like metrics that made you kind of make that decision?
So the timeline was basically I started. So I graduated actually in the fall. I took a semester off. So like after Thanksgiving, I've made the first prototype, put a bunch of flyers up. Basically during finals, I was working on this, and so actually during a final, I like was I got a call from a restaurant. They're saying like the machine broke, so I'd like leave my final and go deal with that. And yeah, I got like, you know, a decent, I think it was like just 10% of maybe 15% of students used the app. And then I graduated, and I don't think it looked, I mean, honestly, if I pitched back then to me now, like I would be like, this is a terrible business idea. Like what is it even? Like I didn't have the business idea yet. Those two big insights with pickup and social were like afterwards. So, I mean, to be frank, I think I really wanted to start a company. I got rejected from Google for software engineering. So I was like, you know, I might as well just stick around and work on this. And it was kind of tough because we didn't have any sort of like external validators, you know, like getting into like YC. We actually even tried to get into Yale's like summer entrepreneurship program that like 10 students ideas get into every summer, and we didn't get into that. So it was pretty, yeah, you know, there was not much going for it, metrics or whatever, but you know, that's just how it happened. I guess I just kind of wanted to work on something.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I guess like since you had a pretty small team to start off with, were you guys really kind of like flexible and fluid with the roles, or like did you like kind of get help or like expand your team very quickly, or how did you go about that? I guess.
Yeah, that's in the beginning. I mean, so much of it was just like hiring and working with people. We got people, I mean, they were specialized, like they were engineers, sales, ops, but we were all like every week, like sitting together, figuring out stuff like, you know, what's like the next big problem to tackle. So it definitely helps to have people who are like, you know, I mean, they might even be like out of school and just like gritty and sleep on a couch. That's what we did. I mean, there's other companies that like start off hiring like staff engineers, Google, pay them like $1 million. I mean, that can work too. But our business, it was pretty scrappy, and it was pretty fun that way too. Hired people who were my classmates at Yale or elsewhere, or like friends of friends.
Cool. Thanks so much.
All right, does anyone else have any questions in the Zoom chat or in person? Okay, well, I think we're done. So thank you, Kevin, so much for coming again. We really appreciate you having you every year. Yeah, I think we'll just conclude it with that. One student is asking how they can connect with you.
Yeah, my email is kevin@snackpass.co. So feel free to reach out and chat about, you know, happy to be a sounding board.
Perfect. Just one more round of applause for Kevin for coming today.
Thanks for having me, everyone. It was great It was really fun to kind of just think through all this and prepare the presentation.
Yeah, we enjoyed having you.
All right, I'll hop off. Take care, everyone.